Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Gitcast podcast with me, Gitbag the Great, and my often reliable guest, Flash Suppressor.
Ahoy all!
We're just going to be playing a bit of World of Warships in the background, and it's just basically just to stimulate conversation, give me something to record over, and if you guys don't like the background footage, you can just put us on in the background and just listen to us chatting to your heart's content, as it may be. And as always, I guess we'll just start off with how our previous weeks have been, guess, as we pretty much always do, to be honest.
Yes, we do rather, don't we?
Well,
I suppose I might as well start.
I mean, it's good to have a
yeah, my
formula.
week's actually been pretty good, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, from the sounds of things, you've been getting a bit more proactive recently with a lot of different things in your life.
I have, yes. I've been getting back into my sporting things. I've been to a few sort of socials with various clubs. I've been keeping up with my writing for the student newspaper as well. I've been looking for various jobs, and I've just been getting on with coursework. So overall, I've been pretty busy, but been feeling a lot happier than I have for a while.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've been feeling a bit stressed out about sort of like how tight money has been and trying to get a job myself recently. But it's like it's not as bad as how anxious I was probably, say, give or take, probably like 3 months ago. So I know how you feel. I can definitely empathise and relate.
Yeah, I'm sure. And, you know, I'm in a sort of slightly more secure financial situation than you are.
Yeah. Yeah, that does help. I mean, the thing is, like, people say, like, money doesn't matter. And, like, I guess in a spiritual sense it kind of doesn't. But it's like, it does help, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it does help to sort of have that sort of, you know, practical material security in a sense. It's just, I think the trick is just to not make that your entire life, I suppose. Yeah, with me, it's basically just last week has just been sending out job applications, trying to make sure I budget properly and don't run out of money, and recording a couple of YouTube videos, and of course trying to get my laptop fixed after it went on the zits over the last couple of days. So I think from my last week has probably been a little less successful than yours, but it's just like, you know, these things happen, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose that's understandable.
Yeah, I mean, it's
a bit annoying about your laptop, but there we go.
Yeah, I think it's still got a bit of warranty on it, so hopefully I should get the suppliers to help out with that. But we'll see how that goes. I mean, they should do, but it's like, just wait and see what happens, I guess. I have emailed them, and I'll probably phone them as well if I haven't heard from them in the next couple of days either.
Yeah, good thinking. Yeah, I've sort of been getting out and about a bit more. I went on Friday night. I had a bit of a sort of social event. I went with some of my friends from my course to see the big Christmas tree down in Library Square at the university being switched on, and there was a bit of a sort of carol event with the band there and so on. And then I took my friend who's from Brazil, and he sort of wants the European/British Christmas experience, and we went to the Christmas dinner that the Students' Union was holding in the big hall in the Students' Union building.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, we had a great time.
Where is he from in Brazil?
He's from near Sao Paulo.
Oh, right, so he's right near the capital then, essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I do want to go to Brazil, actually. Like, there's still even though I've been reasonably well travelled in my life, there's still so many places I want to travel to.
Yeah, no, I've never sort of been outside Europe and North America.
No, it does get quite tricky to do that once you've sort of settled into sort of like an area of comfort, I suppose.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, no, but I think a trip to a third world, not necessarily a third world country, but something like that would be good for me.
Yeah, it's just sort of like make you at least like appreciate the things you got a bit more. Like, I don't really felt like that when I went to Thailand, because not Thailand's not sort of like a completely on the collapse sort of society. It's not like some riddled sort of country that's literally struggling at the seams to survive. It's like it's got quite a few social problems, but it could be doing way worse for itself. But there were a lot of times when I went there in 2012 and I saw like some people there who had just literally nothing, and I was just like, fuck, that's rough. And like, to help out with like cooking meals for them, and then afterwards I'd see how happy they were, and I'd just think, fuck, I'm just really grateful for what I've got, because even if what I've got isn't a huge amount, it's still like, comparatively speaking, it's still more than what they have. So it just made me feel like, god damn, it's just like, it does help to do those sort of things sometimes, just help put things into perspective.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, no, I've sort of done Europe and North America quite intensively at this point.
Yeah.
But, I sort of haven't travelled as widely as many people. I've thought about doing the whole teaching English as a foreign language, volunteering abroad thing. Maybe go to Korea, because my little sister's learning Korean and so on. She's a big fan of sort of Korean culture, and I am too, to a certain extent.
Nice.
Love learning about Admiral Yi and all the rest of it.
Absolute legend. That guy is like the definition of a true full-on like warrior poet baller. Like, I think I look at people sometimes in history, being a great lover of military history myself, and the thing is, in the grand scheme of things, there's only a very few people I could really describe as true full-on badasses, and he's one of them.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean.
I mean, I would recommend anyone listening to this to go up and read up about him. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I've read a couple of books about him. I've read a couple of books about Far Eastern naval warfare. And yeah, the Koreans and their turtle ships and their other ships fighting against the Japanese after the Japanese invaded under the Tokugawas. They were, after the Sengoku Jidai, it was quite an amazing conflict.
Yeah, it was like...
And the way Yi Sun-sin kept coming back after being constantly demoted and stabbed in the back by political intrigue. Well, it's really quite amazing. There's no wonder he's Korea's big sort of national hero.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. But trying to remember the battle where he lost like well over like 3/4 of his navy, and then he went into a battle like a couple of months later against a Japanese naval force of like, I think it was like well over 130 ships, and he had only about like 14 ships with him, and he ended up either destroying or capturing like about something like 90% of the Japanese ships, with the loss of only
yes, that was a battle in the estuary where he cleverly manipulated the use of the currents to trap the Japanese ships.
Oh god, it was fantastic. It's just...
and engaged them in even numbers, and of course he famously died in battle.
Yeah.
Yet another sort of Nelson comparison that you can make.
Yeah, just...
and when he died, one of his sons, wore his armour to fool the crews into thinking that he was still alive so that they wouldn't lose morale.
Yeah, it's real, like, definition of, like, a proper sea dog. He's just, like, fought on to, like, the literal very end.
Yes.
God. Yeah,
definitely.
No, it's like, I mean, those kind of cases, like, are... we always hear about those kind of cases of, like, exceptional heroism and toughness and tenaciousness in battle, but in the grand scheme of things, they are very rare. That's the kind of reason why I guess they're treated as such immense feats of like human capability.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, you can always aspire to be those kind of things, but it's like, not to sound like a Debbie Downer, but like they do happen like rarely. I guess that's why people like him are the national heroes of like countries like Korea or whatever, or whichever country it might be in a given situation.
Yes, indeed. Like, well, I suppose you could say that Oda Nobunaga is kind of the Japanese equivalent.
Yeah.
To sort of our great military heroes.
I just want to try out this Pan-Asian cruiser, Tier 1 cruiser, actually.
Tier 1, alright, in that case I shall go in with ship I haven't actually used yet.
I was just saying that because I haven't used the Chengan, the Tier 1 Pan-Asian cruiser yet, and also considering we were talking about Asian naval warfare, I thought it was probably quite appropriate.
Yeah, you're right.
But that actually brings me on to another point, actually. Like, me and you, in, like, private, we always talk about, like, military history, because we're both very much interested in it. But, like, what would you say is... And I know this is probably quite a tricky question to ask, because, you know, many people have many different interests in their topic areas. But, like, what would you say is, like, probably the war or the conflicts that you're, like, most interested in, that you've, like, studied the most, including in, like, your free time?
That's a tricky one. I've studied a lot about the wars of empire and so on, but I think technically in sort of purely the amount of time that I've spent looking at it, would probably have to be the American Civil War.
Ooh, good choice.
Yeah, that's a really good one. It's a really sort of complicated one. It's still sort of in that era where you still have cavalry, you still have mass formation fighting, but the technology is advancing to the point that you can call it a modern war. It's a war based on industry, and in many ways it's sort of the war that's based on industry, the war that kind of heralds the changes in warfare from the 19th to the 20th century.
I think for me it's probably either got to be like World War II, which is just like the epitomisation of mass scale modern warfare. It's got
that's true.
It's got to be either that or the Napoleonic Wars, which I feel are like the greatest like embodiment of set piece mass formation warfare, before it started to become modernized around the time of, like, you know, the Crimean War or the American Civil War such. So I feel like for me it'd probably be a tie between World War II and the Napoleonic Wars, I think, if you really force me to decide.
Yes, I think I would have chosen sort of World War One over World War Two, just about, just because I'm really sort of fascinated by the politics that surround it, and I'm fascinated by how sort of ideologies and viewpoints changed. And in many ways, you can sort of see, like, you can see World War Two almost as a continuation of World War One. Yeah, in many ways. I tell you one thing: have you read the book about the SAS? The sort of authorized history of the SAS's formation during World War II by, hang on, I'm going to try and find my copy of it so I can see. Yes, by Ben McIntyre.
Oh yeah, no, I have seen it advertised in Waterstones, but I've like never picked it up, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I have read I have read extracts of it, and it is fascinating. Like the tale of how it was almost didn't come to be, and like, but in the end, the government ended up realizing, well, good God, this is such an effective fighting force. You might as well just make them a permanent part of the army.
Yeah, I know. It's the perfect sort of British story of how these public schoolboys and these barroom toughs overcome their carousing and their sort of antisocial behaviour to kick some Nazi arse for king and country.
Yeah, it's like,
you know, it's just a sort of quintessential British story.
They're all like complete just vagabonds and rogues and like rough right from the wrong end of the tracks and such.
Yes, it's sort of like Sharp or the Daniel Rawson books.
Yeah.
Or any of these sort of, or it's sort of like Biggles meets Sharp, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of in a weird way it is, to a really strange extent, but I totally see what you mean.
Yeah, tell you what, if you can't find the time to read the book, Ben McIntyre did a documentary on it where he basically sort of tells the book verbatim.
Yeah.
It's sort of in quite a visually creative way as well, but it's obviously sort of doesn't have the world's biggest budget, and I'd really recommend the book, if only because of the sort of pictures and so on that from the SAS archives that you get in it.
Yeah.
It's one of the books that I'm going to be reviewing on my YouTube channel and that I'm going to write for the Badger for the student newspaper. I've sort of been writing the reviews before I've actually set the YouTube channel up.
Yeah, so, just so you have a bit of like at least an initial bit of content just to propel yourself off of.
Yeah, I mean, I've basically got 4 reviews, 3 of which I'll probably end up having published in the Badger. Probably won't bother with one of them because the other book that I'm reading is a book about the American Revolution, and it was written in 2005, so it's not really quite current enough.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not like it was written in like 1964 or something like ages and ages ago. It at least has almost up-to-date knowledge.
Yeah, totally.
Not quite, but almost. Actually, sorry, I was just going to say, speaking of history documentaries, you really just reminded me of something. I was talking with my brother over Skype a couple of I think it was yesterday actually, and he's not interested in military history as I am. He's interested in it a little bit, particularly when it involves his passionate subject area of physics and science. But I mean, generally he's interested in it. I think it's probably I'm probably a bit more into it, considering I went on to study history at university. But he reminded me of this program me and him used to watch all the time. Well, not all the time, but like whenever it was on, at least on BBC One, I think it was, or BBC Two possibly, called Battlefield Britain, where
with Dan Snow and his father.
Yeah, Dan Snow, and I think it was Peter Snow as well, wasn't it?
Yes, Peter and Dan Snow. Yes, the historian pair. Yes, I know.
And the thing is, it's like basically, for anyone who doesn't know, who's watching this video, it's Peter and Dan Snow basically go around the UK and they do sort of like quick sort of reenactments, sort of like documentaries on like famous battles that happened around the British Isles, and they'll use like actors in like mock interviews and small graphic animations to sort of like frame the battles in an interesting way, both like politically and sort of like strategically, in terms of like how they happened and how they what their origins of these battles were. And it was an entertaining show, but what kind of sort of mucked with it a bit thematically was the fact that they had these really terrible actors doing atrocious mock interviews in every episode, and they would just say like, it would just take you out of it, and it was just not in a bad way, because they were all really funny in like an unintentional sort of way, but it really sort of messed with like the immersion of like, oh yeah, I'm really learning about history here, and you ended up just laughing at it because it was just so over the top. And and my brother sent me a quote from like, I think it was the episode they did on the Battle of Hastings in 1066, when this guy just goes in one of the mock interview sections, just goes, "It was absolute carnage." It's just like, this doesn't need to be here. This is a documentary about the Battle of Hastings, not some actor who's like probably doing this for just a couple £100 and a pint. It's like, what is this? It always took me out of the episodes, even though I did, in all honesty, enjoy those parts.
Yeah, I know. For me, it'll probably have to be a combination of Neil Oliver's The History of Ancient Britain and things like Time Team and so on that were really the documentaries that first got me into history. Well, actually, I know Fred Dibner's Industrial Age. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do actually. I remember I watched it when I was in the later years of primary school. Actually, that was quite interesting. I think shows like that, Battlefield Britain, 20th Century Battlefields, a little bit of Time Team, and a couple of other ones that have missed my mind. I think those were the prime ones that really got me into history.
Yeah. Or hang on. Or how about A History of Modern Britain and so on?
That was alright. I think like I was probably more into like the classical sort of military conflicts, hence the reason why I watched a lot of shows that focused on things like, the Roman Empire, World War II, and like the Napoleonic Wars. Like, I think studying like the globe and like economic situation of like the building of modern Britain was only something I really got into in like sixth form years, like when I was in my late teens, really.
For me, it's probably the opposite. I started out sort of being really interested in sort of cultural history and so on, with a bit of military history on the side. And then I really became very into military history when I started reading things like Sharp and Simon Scarrow's novels and all the rest of it. And then I sort of started getting more into it in my sort of final years of high school and since coming to university.
Yeah, I think I started watching the actual Sharp TV show like when I was just around when I entered my teens, and then like about a year or so after I first started watching them, I had discovered the books that they were based off of, and I started reading them as well. And then I think it was probably only when I was about 16, 17 I got into the things like the building of early modern Britain and like the Cold War and stuff, and modern 20th century global political sort of like history, like whereas like the first thing for me was classical military conflicts. It's weird how like
I suppose. I mean, for me, I suppose one of my other sort of seminal documentaries that I watched that really got me into it was that series World War One in Colour.
Oh, that was good, yeah.
Yeah, though I do think that the final episode in that series, the one where they recreate battles that couldn't be captured on camera because of the technology of the time period, with the atrocious CGI of the late 90s.
Oh, God, yeah.
There was no need for it to be CGI. It was just sort of the enthusiasm of having it, because at that point everybody thought it was God's gift to every type of filmmaking.
Yeah, you can ask the 1998 version of Godzilla about that.
That's actually one of my sort of guilty pleasure films I actually don't really
Why? It's horrendous.
Yeah, but I don't know. I kind of like the Godzilla design in it. I thought it was sort of different.
I went on Imgur recently and I looked at someone's post about like a timeline cross-reference of like all the different incarnations of like Godzilla over the decades since he was first portrayed. And I think it was 1954 actually, and the one from 1988, the film with Jean Reno in it, it just looks so out of place. It just looks horrific to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I sort of saw that around the time when I first saw Independence Day. In fact, I think I probably got the two films at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my introduction to sort of silly 90s action films.
Yeah, that's the weird thing is like I do like I always liked I've always liked silly 90s action films, but I've got to be serious. Like I cannot stand the 1998 Godzilla, and looking back on it now, I personally think Independence Day was just pants. I mean, at least Independence Day is kind of like so bad it's good, but it was just daft, really just daft.
Yeah, it was. Though I suppose I do like the sort of French actor they got in Godzilla.
Yeah, Jean Reno.
The way they made him and the other French people so stereotypically French was quite funny.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing eating my breakfast? I'm hungry. It's like, or yeah, it's like every scene before like the final action sequence, you see them either spying on people or just eating like bread and cheese. It's like the most stereotypically French thing.
And complaining about the quality of American coffee, yeah.
Yeah, and like doing impressions of Elvis to get past security guards.
Yes.
It's just, I mean, I'm not going to say like Godzilla is a flat out bad movie. It's like probably like 5 out of 10 or something for me. It's like, it's something I wouldn't mind watching, but it's not something I wouldn't go out my way to revisiting. But I will admit, it's as bad as I think it is on like a basic level. It is at least fun to a certain extent. It's just that I just cannot stand the way it just spits in the face of the franchise, and like the design of Godzilla in that film isn't great, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, no, I suppose you're right. I mean, I understand that is sort of the main criticism of the 1998 Godzilla. The fact that the design of it is a bit silly.
Yeah, and what's his name? The main actor in it, I can't remember his name. guy who goes, "That's a lot of fish," or whatever.
Yeah.
What's his name again?
Well, the character is called Pizza Populus or something, and they try and make a joke of nobody being able to pronounce his name, which for some reason they thought was funny.
Yeah, which is kind of tragic because, in all honesty, no one could pronounce his name, not even the audience members.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's he wasn't. Oh god, his name's right on the tip of my tongue, but I genuinely can't remember it.
Yeah, Zatopoulos, I think it is.
No, that's the name of the character, you donut.
Oh yeah, sorry, isn't it sort of Beaufort or something like that? Beauregard? I don't know.
Beauregard? That's the name of a bloody Street Fighter character, you donut. Oh, great torpedoes. Oh, I'm down.
Yeah, I tell you one thing, my least favourite part of that, though, was the female lead character.
Oh, gosh. Oh, don't tell me about
I'll tell you one thing, the stereotypical Jewish reporter chap was so offensive it was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was kind of like to the point. I didn't really find him offensive that much myself personally, but like I can kind of see where you're coming from, and to be fair, I can agree that it was just kind of a bit ridiculous.
Yeah. Or the story arc about the American National Guard officer.
What happened in that again?
I don't know. They didn't really sort of set it up or anything, but then at the end they sort of acted like him being given recognition by his superiors was some big payoff for his character.
Oh, that, yeah, it was just like...
Despite never having sort of made that an issue before at all, ever.
It was like, you take that out and you could have made the film at least a tenth better, cut out like 15 minutes of just completely pointless footage and just made the film considerably more just enjoyable and less just tedious. It's like...
Yeah, and then there's that scene where Godzilla goes underwater in the Hudson.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then it briefly turns into Hunt for the Red October with equally bad CGI.
I'd honestly say in this case it was probably worse because at least you don't have at least you don't have Sean Connery trying to con the fact that he's a Russian officer trying to cover it up.
Yeah, well, I suppose there's technically the explanation that he's supposed to be Lithuanian. And given that all the other Russian officers start speaking with English accents, I suppose it's not too terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny though, just seeing a bunch of English and Scottish actors in that film just trying to pass off really terrible Russian accents.
Yeah, no, to be fair, I don't think it was quite as bad as Robbie Coltrane in what was that that James Bond film with the oil pipeline thing with not Pierce Brosnan, the one who came before Brosnan as Bond. It's not The Living Daylights.
No, that would have been the oil line. That would have been a Pierce Brosnan film. I think that was The World Is Not Enough, or
No, it's not The World Is Not Enough. It were.
That's.
Oh yes, it was The World Is Not Enough.
Yeah,
was that Brosnan? I thought it was.
Yeah, that was literally like
chap whose name I can't remember.
Yeah, that was literally like the second one in the series that Brosnan was in.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, you're right. No, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the one who came before him, who was in Living Daylights.
Yeah, it had Robbie Coltrane in it. Pierce Brosnan, Goldie was in it for a.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, no, it was. I think it was like the first one right after Goldeneye, and then I think it came just before Tomorrow Never Dies. I think.
Yes, you're right. It did.
But for FYI.
In fairness, I think that. I mean, I think that one might actually be my favourite Brosnan James Bond film.
What, The World Is Not Enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one after it, I think... Actually, no, I'd say GoldenEye is my favourite Pierce Brosnan one, personally. Just because of just... It's just a solid action film, really.
Yeah, that's true.
And you've also got, like, the epic final fight scene between him and Sean Bean. It's just fantastic.
Yes, on the big telescope in Brazil.
Oh god, it's brilliant.
Is it Brazil or is it in Bolivia? I think it's actually Bolivia, somewhere in South America.
Yeah, I can't quite remember myself, unfortunately, either. But yeah, no, it's a fantastic scene, but where he's just running around the facility.
Yeah, that's true. Though, to be fair, the fight in the submarine in the Bosphorus is quite good as well. And tomorrow, oh, actually, The World Is Not Enough has that great ski chase scene with the microlights.
Is that The World Is Not Enough?
Yeah, I think so, isn't it? Because he and the girl who turned out to be a villain are skiing down the mountain and they get attacked by the snowmobiles on the microlight things, didn't they?
God, I need to brush up on my Bond film knowledge. I haven't seen any of the films in ages, but...
Yeah, me neither. Also, I think The World Is Not Enough is sort of one of the better Bond theme tunes.
I can't say that for myself personally. I think it's like a little bit sort of too 90s-ish for me, but as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
Well, I mean, it's just a personal preference, really. I think like it's still a solid film, and the soundtrack for the most part in that one is actually pretty good. But it's just, I don't know. It's just like the theme song never really caught me as being that memorable, to be honest. So I can't really say I recommend it personally. I tell you what, actually, one theme song in the series that I freaking love is the one for Casino Royale by name of that God, again,
Adele? No, it's not Adele, is it?
No, Adele was the
Skyfall.
Yeah, Adele did Skyfall, which came like 2 films later. But no, Chris Cornell, I think it is, something like that. The poor sod who sadly died recently, I think he did, and he was only like in his mid-30s as well.
Huh.
But yeah, no, I'd say probably after Goldfinger and the original Bond theme is probably that as my favourite. I was going to say actually though, speaking of the Pierce Brosnan ones, Tomorrow Never Dies, the one that came after The World Is Not Enough.
Yeah.
I think that came after The World Is Not Enough.
Yes, it did. Yes.
Yeah. That one, not my favourite Pierce Brosnan film, and not even my favourite Bond film, but overall, that's also really good, and I'd probably say, while not my favourite Pierce Brosnan film, is definitely probably the most underrated film in the series.
Really? I always heard that it was sort of widely disliked because of the terrible CGI.
Yeah, but I think that's probably more the case in the last Pierce Brosnan film, the one with the massive space heat beam thing.
I thought that was The World Is Not Enough. Oh no, not The World. Oh yeah, that's right, isn't it? That's Die Another Day. Sorry, yeah, I'm getting confused.
Die Another Day is the one with the atrocious CGI. I mean,
yeah.
Most of the ones in the 90s have a bit of CGI in them, and sometimes it does stand out. But like, Die Another Day is the one. I think it came in like 2004 or 5, and I'm not gonna lie. As much as I like that film, its CGI really shows.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it does. Like the first bit where Bond is surfing into North Korea.
Oh God, it's
just the worst.
Yeah, it doesn't look great.
Though in fairness, I suppose the whole car chase on the ice scene.
Oh, that was amazing.
Was good, because I think for a lot of that they actually had practical effects.
Yeah, the thing is, like, it was weird because like there was some like introductory or critical scenes in that film where they just overused CGI, and then they had scenes like that where they used practical effects and like knowledge of like the technology that they were using to their advantage, and ended up making possibly some of the most iconic scenes in the franchise. And yeah, they then just ruin it with like weird shit, like like you said, like the occasional bit of CGI, like where he's parachute skating away from the heat beam, or like you said, the introductory scene where he's ice skating into North Korea.
Yeah.
It just doesn't look quite right, does it? I mean, admittedly, it could look worse, but it also could look a lot better as well.
Yeah, that's true. And it was also sort of a bit too kind of grim and depressing. I mean, the tone was just all over the place as well. It was grim and depressing in some places and stupidly light-hearted in others.
Yeah, not as bad as Quantum of Solace, though.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Also, I don't think it'll really hold up well, because at that point, North Korea wasn't considered really that much of a threat, but these days, all of a sudden, it's come back round to being relevant again.
Yeah, I think... it's a bit of its time, to be fair. I think it's it's kind of sadly tied to sort of like themes and like styles of like spy films that were made around that time in the mid to early 2000s. It's kind of a shame because I think it's still like an entertaining action film at the end of the day. I mean, it's probably the weakest of the Pierce Brosnan films, but it's still like entertaining enough. What would you say is actually continue on with the theme Bond films? What would you say is your favourite Bond film overall?
My favourite overall. Now that's a tough one. It's probably got to be The Living Daylights. I think it has my favourite, or one of my favourite Bond theme tunes. I think the plot overall is solid enough. It's got some good action scenes, a good use of practical effects, and it has one of probably my favourite Bond actor after Connery.
Roger Moore?
No, this one was after Roger Moore. It's
oh yeah, oh goodness sake. Hang on, I'm going to look this up on my tablet so we don't keep just make ourselves look like mugs because we know so little. The Living Daylights, was it?
Yes.
Living Daylights. Let me see. Get IMDb up. Timothy Dalton, that's it.
Yes, Timothy Dalton.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. He was very solid as Bond.
Yeah,
also,
definitely.
Also, it was a weird one because it's like, I think many people argue that like the Roger Moore era of Bond films are kind of like the most light-hearted ones, whereas like you look at the Timothy Dalton ones. I mean, there was only like I think it was like 3 Timothy Dalton ones in total, but they were all like stood out so much because they were all really dark, actually.
Yeah, I know. Like in License to Kill, there's several brutal execution scenes, and the villain is a drug lord who ends up getting burned to death by petrol.
And his main henchman gets eviscerated in a cocaine mincer. Yeah,
or in The Living Daylights, it starts with a daring escape from the Soviet Union, and it ends with a chap being chucked out of a plane, and there's a fairly dark depiction of the war between the Soviet Union and the Mujahideen.
Yeah.
Though, in fairness, that's yet another thing that hasn't really aged well, has it?
Well, no, but I mean, I suppose, like, that was, like, the big, like, international story at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that always really struck me. It's like, there's always different shifts in like tones and sort of like styles between the different periods of the Bond films, but I find that's probably the one that's the most significant and the biggest, or at least the easiest to identify is like Roger Moore's films generally being like entertaining action films with some dark themes, but mostly being like light-hearted and kind of quite funny, and then Timothy Dalton just going fucking like really dark and really sort of quite vicious.
Yeah, and then there's the modern day sort of semi-reboots with Daniel Craig.
Yeah, which are also... which are more... I find they're just... I think, like... I don't know.
Yeah, it's a sort of modern grimdark kind of thing rather than your traditional sort of 70s and 80s kind of edgy dark, isn't it?
I find I prefer the 70s and 80s style of
yeah,
dark,
me too.
Though, because, like... It's like the postmodern sort of like style of dark you see in like the Daniel
The Killing Joke.
Yeah. Well, the Killing Joke's all right, but like I mean in the Daniel Craig Bond films,
yeah, or in like things like the Hunger Games and so on.
Yeah, it just gets a bit over excessive, and like it always ends up rolling into some story about self redemption, which is just so overdone these days over the last 15 years, I think, and it's like. At this point, I've just kind of gotten a bit sick of it. And even though there was a lot of like the 70s and 80s style of like dark, like we see in The Living Daylights and such, done, of course, in the 70s and 80s, I haven't gotten as tired of that. Even though there's probably more of that on display, because I feel like it was less indulgent of a style, and as a result, I feel like a bit more forgiving about that than the kind of dark we see in the Daniel Craig films as compared to Timothy Dalton's ones. I don't know. Maybe,
I take your point there.
Maybe I'm sounding like a bit overly mouth flapping and pretentious, but like I I feel like that's the main way how I feel about it.
Yes, I suppose though. Um, I mean, I dare say that both juxtapose humor to their darkness, but to a certain extent, I feel like the sort of more wacky comedy of the 70s and 80s Timothy Dalton films kind of works to a disadvantage against the grimness, whereas, you know, even the humor in things like Skyfall, which I found quite funny, it is all still focused on sort of being tired and depressed and sort of generally just looking at the darkness in the world kind of thing.
I know, but
and laughing about it, whereas
the thing is, it's almost like it's a completely different film series, because that's always the underlying theme, and like you do need something just sometimes just to break it up a bit, because I mean, admittedly, some people will be into that sort of thing, and I can't blame them at all, because everyone's got their own sort of tastes. But for me personally, I can't watch a film series that's always constantly like that in a thematic sense, because it just gets me tired and just sort of like, you know, maybe I'd sort of like, I lack the ability to look into things deeper than that, but I do sometimes want just a bit of entertainment and lightheartedness on the odd occasion at least, just to sort of break things up a little bit, which is why I kind of feel a bit more forgiving, like I said, towards the darkness in the Timothy Dalton films.
yes, indeed. What I've always noticed, or at least I'm noticing these days with modern filming styles and camera technology particularly, is that modern films have sort of softer lines in their softer edges and more muted colours generally. Partly because of their new sort of camera styles, and they also do it to sort of fit the CGI in better. But it sort of feels like they're sort of overkilling it a bit.
Yeah.
With that, because the Timothy Dalton films and so on managed to be dark, you know, without being literally dark.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, which is better, the third Harry Potter film or the sixth Harry Potter film? Both of them go for some dark themes, but the third Harry Potter film still lets itself have some light and sort of bright, almost comic book-like colours and so on in it, whereas the sixth, seventh and eighth Harry Potter films are all just dark.
Yeah, I
mean, grey and brown.
I didn't like the last three Harry Potter films, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, no, my favourite is actually number 5.
Mine's...
Which, again, grim, dark and depressing, but still brightly coloured to sort of actually juxtapose the differences.
Yeah, I think...
between the two, because it's sort of like, you know, we're facing this huge, great threat, you know, fine. But, you know, show us the sort of colour and so on that makes the world worth fighting for, you know.
Yeah, I think the one for me that I like the most is probably the third one.
Yeah, that's a fan favourite with many people, and I understand why. But no, for me it's got to be number 5.
Oh, my lord, I just got a complete overkill on that cruise there.
Yeah, I saw. Wow, that was cool.
Wow, that's bloody hell. Yeah, I can see why you'd like 5 as your most favourite, because I mean, even though I prefer 3, it's still like, technically speaking, 5 is one of the better made films in the series.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Actually, I was just thinking, like, I asked you like a moment ago, like, what your favourite Bond film was. I didn't even say mine.
Yeah, what's yours then?
Well, I mean, this is going to sound really weird, considering I just spent a short moment just like taking the mick out of Roger Moore. But my favourite one is actually his first. I think it's his first one, which is Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die. Oh yeah, that is quite good. I do like that one.
It's got a decent theme tune. It's got probably easily Roger Moore's best.
Yeah, by Paul McCartney.
Yeah, and which is weird considering I don't really like his music that much, but or at least his solo music, I mean. And it's got easily Roger Moore's best performance out of any of his appearances in the Bond series. Like, I mean, for the most part, I think his like appearances in the Bond films are a bit too light-hearted, but I think he nails what he was meant to do in Live and Let Die. He was really, really solid in that film, and themes of the film are well balanced. It's and the villain is. I'm not gonna lie. When I was little, I was genuinely scared of the villain in that film. He was a nasty bugger.
Yeah, I know, totally. but I think the Roger Moore films are a bit hit and miss.
Oh,
Like
really,
I
really?
kind of like Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
Moonraker and The Spy Who Loved Me are sort of only redeemed by the character of Jaws.
I hate
But my
Moonraker.
favourite Roger Moore Bond film has got to be A View to a Kill. I mean, apart from anything else, you have the epic Zeppelin fight
that's
over the Golden Gate Bridge to finish it off, and it's got one of the best Bond themes.
Yeah, it's all right. I can't stand Moonraker, to be honest. Though I absolutely hate it. It's really.
Do you think it or The Spy Who Loved Me is worse?
Spy Who Loved Me. Which one was The Spy Who Loved Me again?
That's the one where the mad businessman is capturing submarines to destroy the world.
Oh yeah, that one. That one was really weird. I mean, it's not objectively, it's not that good, but it's still at the end of the day kind of stupidly entertaining. Not as much as say, one of the other films in the series. Like, what was the other one you mentioned about Roger Moore?
Moonraker?
No, the other one.
A View to a Kill?
Yeah, I think it's that one. I mean, that one is at least like stupidly entertaining, but
Yeah.
No, I think Moonraker for me has got to be his worst appearance in the series. Although, as bad as any one of his films in the series might be, and as much as I might rag on his kind of like whole theme of his period of being James Bond, I can easily say without a shadow of a doubt my least favourite film in the franchise has got to be Quantum of Solace.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that one commits the sin of just being forgettable. I mean, I literally don't know what happened in it. I've only seen it like twice. I just felt no compulsion to watch it again.
Yeah, it's literally.
I got a feeling it was somehow related to like power struggles in South America.
Something like that, but they didn't explain it very well. I think
No.
it's the only film. I mean, even considering I really dislike Moonraker and From Russia with Love, it's probably the only film in the series that never entertains me at any point in the film. Like,
You don't like From Russia with Love?
no, it's not that entertaining really. But it's
I mean,
like,
granted, it had some pacing issues, but I thought, as the sort of earlier films go, I think I actually prefer it over Goldfinger.
I still think Goldfinger's way better. But I mean, it's like at the very least, From Russia with Love has got a couple of good action scenes, and Moonraker has also got a couple of good action scenes, and it's got the craziness of the laser beam guns at the end. But
Yeah, I know, that was funny.
But yeah, no, I'm just Quantum of Solace. It's just easily
It's like, how do we do Star Wars,
Yeah, but Quantum of Solace is just boring throughout the entire film. Nothing is memorable. Nothing stands out. It really just lives off of name alone. It's just boring. It really leaves nothing to be remembered.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of torn between that one and Spectre as being kind of my least favourite of the Daniel Craig ones. Because, Spectre was competently done, and I like the way a lot of it was shot. And I like the way a lot of it was acted as well. I thought it was quite good. But it just sort of seemed to me to be going sort of by the numbers.
Yeah, I can
sort of going through the motions. And I think the point where that was most clear was where they just go to the villain's hideout and, that's no big deal. They literally get the train and then a car out there.
Yeah, it's
without a single plan for how they're going to get out of it or anything.
Yeah, it's like that weird bit in Transformers 2 where they say, "Oh, hey guys, we need to go to Egypt." Then they're in Egypt. It's like, that's not thematically smooth or clever or constructive in any way.
Yeah, I know.
That's just lazy.
And then, worst of all, it tried to sort of do Captain America: The Winter Soldier's thing by trying to make the whole thing about government surveillance in the end.
Yeah, it was a weird film. I mean,
yeah,
it could have been so much worse. I think, in all honesty, it's probably easily in my top 3 worst films in the series, but it's still nowhere near as bad as I still like it more than From Russia with Love, and definitely a lot more than Quantum of Solace. I think Quantum of Solace is my worst. From Russia with Love is my second worst, and and Spectre has got to be my third worst, because it also has that stupid... Actually, I'm wondering if I should say this, because it's kind of a spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the film, but... yeah, actually, yeah, no, I'll leave it out, but basically there's a bit at the end involving Bond and a particular character in the film that I just thought just did not fit in with Bond's... the traditional sort of like idea of Bond's character and like how he acts towards people. It just... Oh, it's just stupid. Really, like, I mean, it's not the worst film in the series, like I said, but it does mess up a lot of things.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. I think I know the point you mean. Yeah, best not spoil it though. All right, you go ahead.
Actually, I'm just going to need to take a quick break just to go to the toilet. I'll be back in a second.
Okay, we can edit this part out.
Yeah, fine.
Or not.
Or I'll just leave it in, and then I'll just start recording again randomly.
Yeah, fair enough.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. Just had really needed to go to the loo, and I also decided to get another can of beer from the fridge as well. So yeah, I mean, kind of basically summarised our thoughts quite conclusively, I think, about like which is our favourite point in the Bond franchise, at least.
Yes, I think we did. What else can we talk about, do you think? We've sort of talked about what we normally do. We've talked about films. We've talked a bit about books.
Talked a bit about military history as well.
That's true, yeah.
Actually, I was going to say, one thing I've been getting into the gist of doing recently, or that I've been doing for a while actually, is having sort of like pot sort of like meals in the week that I cook, and I'll usually cook them for like 4 or 5 nights at a time, and I'll just make it and then reheat it for like the remaining like 4 or 5 nights afterwards, and that would be like my meal for like the weekdays. And what I'll do usually is I'll because I usually eat like meat or fish at the weekend at the moment.
Yeah.
And usually I've mainly been making my week sort of meals as like things like, you know, vegetarian chili, or like you know, vegan curry or something like that. And then at the weekends I'll have something like, you know, I don't know, like egg and bacon and like beans and stuff, or like McDonald's or something, just so I can get, you know, a little bit of meat or something, just get my fix of unhealthiness. But at the same time, I've also been like making some weekday sort of like pot meals sometimes, where it's been things like beef, minced chili con carne, or like chicken fajitas or something, you know. I sort of like did that so like my diet wouldn't just be all the same, and so I could have a bit of like variation in it. And I guess it's a bit different for you because you don't eat meat because you're vegetarian. But have you ever gotten that with having like a, you know, a purely vegetarian diet?
Yes, I have. You know, something sort of really satisfying that sort of lasts for a while.
Yeah.
You're talking about. Yeah, no, I have. Like, I mean, I've talked about my sort of lentil stews and large pots of curry. And of course, there's also, you can make, like, I often make massive pots full of vegetarian bolognese. Sort of almost like a sort of school dinner size of pot, just full of vegetarian bolognese I put in the fridge, and then I have for a whole week. And if you spice that right, it can sort of maintain, it doesn't get too bland, even if you're eating it for several nights in a row. But yeah, I sort of tend to do the same thing. I just have this meal that I obsess over for a while, and then I move on to the next thing. I suppose that's sort of my way with most things. I have a particular period of history, or a particular book, or a particular film or television series that I sort of get really into, and then I leave it for a while and probably come back to it eventually.
Yeah, I think it's like I just sort of like keep it sort of more like I'll have this period where I'm doing one of the things in this general topic area, then another one after that in a different general topic area, and then I'll just generally do that so I can like keep my mind open to like a bunch of different options of like things, but at the same time I know roughly what I'll be doing. I think that's kind of how I do things personally, and it kind of extends to cooking. Like, one week I know it'll be like a vegetarian meal, one week it'll be a meat sort of meal that I'll have in the week, and stuff like that. I don't actually. I was going to say though, I don't usually make a fish meal for like my weekly pot meal for the weekdays, because I've found that fish for me personally does go off a little bit quicker than even some meats do.
Yeah, I'm no expert on that, but I can only assume you're right. Yeah, so that's the risk that you sort of run a lot. Like, yes, but I sort of go away, you stupid cat. Hello.
Yeah. Oh right, you took to your landlord's cat. I was thinking, oh god, Phil's gone mad.
No, she's here. Go away.
God, she doesn't sound like she's in a good mood.
No, she's not. I just had to lift her off the keyboard. She doesn't like being lifted.
Oh right, okay. So I thought you had a fucking fight with her or something.
Yeah, well, sometimes it gets close to that, but no, we get along well enough. She just wanted to be let out of my bedroom, but I was sort of here on the computer, so I didn't notice, and she just came up and started badgering me.
Oh, well, at least you've like let her out now or something, right?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, she's out.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I do like cats.
Yeah, I think as I've gotten older, when I was younger, I used to only like cats. As I've gotten older, I've just appreciated the companionship of really any animal, to be honest. I mean, that kind of guess that stems from like when I did that volunteering in China, where I worked on an animal conservation park. I think cats are still really. I think I do still really like cats, but like at this point, I like the companionship of any animal, really. Like I do like dogs now more than when I was younger.
Yeah, no, I sort of got over my fear of dogs, and I'm now just about fine with them. But I think for practicality, for most people, a cat is probably appropriate. But yeah, I mean, I could never sort of have one of my own, as it were, because well, I'm sort of vegetarian, and having a cat would entail buying lots and lots of meat and so on. So
I don't think if I was a vegetarian it'd be that much of a problem for me personally. I mean, maybe it's just different sort of ways of looking at things, but I just I mean, it's part of a cat's diet, so it's like, why not incorporate that into there if you are a vegetarian? It doesn't mean you have to like touch it with your bare hands or you have to eat it, I guess.
No, that's true. But ethically, I would argue that I would still be responsible for the meat because I would be the one purchasing it.
Yeah, but the thing is, you've got to remember, it's like, naturally speaking, like cats' diets do, they do. Naturally, cats' diets do include the kind of protein that can only be gained from eating another living thing, like mice or chicken or whatever.
Oh, totally, yeah. But then I'm sort of under obligation to like not have a cat, then, aren't I?
Well, not necessarily. It's like, it's not like you're the one who's touching the meat. It's not like you're the one who's eating it or smelling it or whatever. It's like
no. But economically speaking, I'm the one who's responsible for the death of the creature that produces the meat.
Yeah, but you've also got to think it's like not in regards to you. It's in regards to the animal's diet.
No, I'm aware of that. It's just, I'm the one who is responsible then for buying it. And obviously it's the right thing to do if you have a cat, because you can't feed it vegetarian stuff, obviously.
Alright, so you'd sort of like opt out if you were really uncomfortable with it, of just having a cat altogether.
Yeah, I think I'd have to.
Well, actually, in that case, I guess you could probably try having a little miniature like turtle or something, because pretty sure they're vegetarians, right?
Yeah, totally. A turtle or something like a guinea pig, maybe.
Yeah, you could probably. Yeah, one of those guys. I think would be a great suit for you if you're really squeamish about meat and stuff, because.
I'm not squeamish about it. I mean, for my landlord's cat and so on, I'm happy to feed it the meat. It's just, but then again, I'm not the one buying it, am I?
No, and I guess it would be different if it was like your own cat, I suppose. But
yeah.
But yeah, no. If you really can't stand the idea of abiding by that, then I'd recommend getting something like either a hamster, a guinea pig, or like a tortoise, because those guys are vegetarian and they love like their apples and like tomatoes and cucumber and stuff.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I think I mean maybe it's just me with like me being kind of a bit more flippant, I guess in general. But like, and also the fact that I do eat meat, but I just don't really mind as much. It's like if an animal eats something, even if it's something I wouldn't eat, like it's their diet really.
Yeah, totally. I don't begrudge a cat for eating it. I don't begrudge a cat for fairly hunting and then eating a kill. But, you know, again, it's not the cat that's doing it in this case, is it? It's the meat industry.
Yeah, but you're not the one
that is being done essentially to serve humans.
But I guess I can see what you're saying, but it's just like I guess also at the same time it's like it's not like you're the one who's going out and getting these chickens and putting them in tins with like gravy and stuff.
No, that's true.
Actually, saying that now kind of makes me want to get some like chicken with like roast tatties and gravy when I've just made like a chickpea, spinach and potato curry. Although, mind you, like that is one of my favourite like things to make is chickpea, spinach and potato curry, because I usually make it quite nicely. So I am actually looking forward to having it. Just some brown rice or something.
Yeah, definitely. I need to make a curry again sometime. I usually make mine with tofu, cashew nuts, a bit of a spot of ginger, lots of chickpeas, various spices and so on, and some paneer if I can get my hands on it.
Oh, paneer's great.
Yeah.
There's my favourite Indian place in Brighton. It's this place called Brinjal. It's a fantastic little restaurant. Do great takeaway. They do a really good sag paneer curry, which many people might not know is basically just Indian cheese with like spices, garlic, onion, and spinach, and it's great. It's usually a pretty difficult dish to mess up, to be honest, but Brinjals, they do a really, really good one actually. I think you might have had it like the last time me and you got a takeaway together from there.
Yes, I think I did. Yes, I do like a bit of sag paneer.
Yeah, no, they make a really good one themselves. I'm trying to think of where else does like a really good one. I think didn't you get one once from like Sainsbury's actually, like a ready-made one, and it was quite nice.
Yeah, I think I did. Well, I got some similar curry. Yes, yeah, no, I definitely did. It was one of the times when we had one of our film nights around your place.
Yeah, I think that was it. I think it was the last time we did one of those, and I think you ended up getting like some Bombay potatoes and a bit of sag paneer and just like some naan bread and samosas and stuff. And
yes, that's my normal combination.
Yeah, whereas with me it's like either Bombay potatoes or sag paneer, some pila rice, and like then either something like chicken dansak or lamb rogan josh. Oh, just mentioning it now makes me really want something like that actually.
Yeah, me too actually. Yeah, I've got a bit of a lentil dal. Oh my goodness me, you're dead.
Yeah, I'm screwed. I did not manoeuvre very well there at all, but yeah, tuck dal I think is probably my one of my piece meat favourite like dishes in Indian cuisine. Right behind.
Yeah, definitely.
Right behind dansak actually, which is essentially the same but just with either meat or fish.
You know what? I'd really like to try one of these days. What? Some golgappa, which is sort of like a spiced potato puff kind of thing.
What is that again?
It's sort of a potato dough puff pastry kind of thing that's really spicy.
I think I might have had it before. Is it kind of like... It's kind of like shaped a bit like a pakora, isn't it?
A little, yeah. It looks a lot like that. It's the same sort of deal. It's sort of deep fried pastry covering sort of a potato centre.
Oh, God, I'm trying to think if I've had that before. I think I might have done from like a real sort of like rustic Indian takeaway that used to be around in Woolwich. But yeah, I must have had one of those before. Yeah, I do remember they're usually like super spicy and just have them in a bit of like greaseproof paper and stuff, and like dip them into raita or something. God, actually, that's another thing I love about Indian cuisine is raita. It's just so simple, but it just complements everything really nicely.
I know. I love the little Indian sauces. I love raita. I love yogurt sauce. I love.
That's what it is. It's yogurt with like mint and cucumber in it.
Oh, that, yeah. So I was thinking of the sort of slightly tangier, sort of reddish brown curried sauce, or else the sort of light green curry sauce. You know that one?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I think
The actual sort of chili sauce they have.
yeah, no. My favourite one of those like little side sauces that Indian takeaways always give you has got to be raita because it's just yogurt, cucumber, bit of mint, like maybe a bit of lemon juice. Simple. Just goes really nice with like samosas and poppadoms. It's great.
Hmm.
It's especially nice with things like that tomato, not tomato, potato fluff thing you mentioned, where they're usually like really spicy. Like just dip a bit of it in that. It's amazing stuff. I remember they used to have a kind of thing like that in the in the Turkish restaurants near where I used to live in North London. For anyone who doesn't know, I used to live in Haringey for a period of about a few years ago, and there was loads and loads of Turkish restaurants around the part of Haringey where I lived, and whenever you walked in there, the first thing any of them would bring around would be like a little small plate with like some flatbread, olives, and some chili sauce, and also like some mild like yogurty mint sauce, and oh, it's great. And I always used to love just dipping the bread in the yogurty mint sauce, and then dipping the other end of like the sliced flatbread in the chili sauce, and it was just fantastic. I know it probably seems a bit thematically removed, but like I just felt like talking like about food for like the last few minutes of like podcast, just to kind of like break it up a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I realised like we'd been talking mostly about like quite thematically in-depth sort of topics, so I thought we'd just like switch it up with like something that was probably a bit more lighter-hearted and simple.
Yeah, no, totally. No, I mean, I'm trying to think about what sort of really special kind of things that I've had recently that I've really enjoyed. I did have a very nice tofu burrito in Falmouth Bar at the university.
Oh God, that sounds... I mean, even for a meat eater like myself, that doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, it was really nice. There are sort of pork and chicken burritos there as well, but from what I've heard, the tofu one was actually superior.
I might try the chicken one at some point, actually. Actually, no, I'll try the... Did you say they do a beef one?
I think there may be a beef one. I heard my friends talking about a pork one, though.
Alright, well, if they don't have a beef one, then I'm definitely going to try the pork one, at least.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what sort of other... Oh, I tell you one thing that I had recently that was really, really nice. It was sort of garlic butter sautéed mushroom bruschetta.
God, that sounds amazing.
It was so magnificent. Umpteen different types of mushrooms.
Where did you get that?
At Carluccio's in the centre of Brighton, near Jubilee Square.
Oh yeah, I remember they have a few branches in London as well. Yeah.
Yes, I had that, and then I had a very nice kale and sage and kale, sage, and caper butter sauce over those little noodles that are sort of shaped like ears, like these oreliotti, I think they're called.
Oh, nice. Was that when your family visited over from Germany?
That was when my mum came over last weekend.
Oh, nice. God. Yeah, no.
That was a great way to round the whole thing off, because we had dinner at that other all-you-can-eat vegetarian Indian place.
Yeah.
And it was really, really nice.
Whenever my mum visits me in Brighton from like up in London, we don't always do it, but we do quite like going to this place called Shogun Noodle Bar in Brighton. They have like one of the smallest menus out of any place or out of any cafe or restaurant I've been to in Brighton, but it's all just like really well done food, and it's like literally just like a few things. You've got like pumpkin katsu curry, chicken katsu curry, seaweed salad, and a few different kinds of like side dishes, a couple of different ramen, and like a couple of different beers and like hot drinks, and I think a couple of like ice cream flavors as well, and that's it. Literally, it's got like less than 1.5 dozen like things on the items on like the food menu. I think it's like really small menu, but it's really nice because like that way you don't have like too much to pick from, and you kind of like you just have like a really set idea of like the kind of general thing of what you want. It's there, just pick it, and they're usually pretty quick, and they're always like really good quality food as well. I mean, no, granted, that's not not the case with any other restaurant or cafe in Brighton, but like with them, it's like particularly prevalent, and it's not necessarily a bad thing either to have like a big and expansive menu. But like, I quite like changing it up sometimes and going somewhere that has a smaller rather than larger menu, just so like I can be like, right, I'll just have that and leave it at that. It's like quite nice actually, and they and God, I know you're a vegetarian, but honestly, their chicken katsu curry is top notch. Although actually, tell you what, you might really like their seaweed salad. That's really good from there.
Yeah, I'll bear it in mind. I've been looking for a sort of nice Japanese sushi and noodle bar to go to.
Tell you what, because I'm living at the moment near Churchill Square. There's a what do we call it?
Yeah, there's a sushi bar sort of just further down North Street from there. I know that one.
Yeah, Itsu. It's right on the corner of that cross section right near the clock tower in the middle of Brighton.
Yeah, near Waterstones. I know the one you mean.
Yeah, that's kind of like that's probably the most mainstream like Japanese or like Oriental theme food sort of like place in that part of town. And that's a Japanese place, and it does like sushi, ramen, and things like that. It's quite good. But I've noticed there's also a bunch of other Japanese places around the area that are slightly smaller, on top of a few like Vietnamese and Korean places, and a couple of Chinese places as well. So if you ever want to go out for lunch or dinner around there, we could definitely do that, because there's quite a lot to pick from in terms of Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, or Japanese around that area.
Yeah, no, I suppose yeah, no, I know you're right. I mean, my favourite, well, at least the restaurant I've visited most often in Brighton has got to be the Vietnamese Cafe Rio on North Road, I think it is, just to the east of the train station down the road.
I don't think I've ever been to that one.
Yeah, you have. You introduced me to it.
Oh, it's that.
It was that time at the end of first year when we went to that place together.
Oh yeah, I haven't been there in ages. I might go there again sometime soon. But
yeah, no, I took my mother there because she really likes the noodle soup they do there too.
Yeah, I remember that.
One of my favourites, definitely.
The noodle soup there is really good, and I tell you what, even though it's like not the thing you'd immediately think of in terms of Vietnamese or Korean food, their coffee there is actually really good.
Yeah, no, I've never sort of had that from them. I've mostly, when it comes to drinks, sort of had like a can of San Pellegrino fruit juice or something with it, and one of the things that they do that I like is their vanilla dumplings.
I've never had those. They sound solid.
Yeah, no, they don't always have them, but they, along with most of their sort of sweet dessert goods, are really nice to have.
They sound really nice. What are they?
Well, they're sort of like they're a bit like mochi, only they don't have any filling. They're just sort of pure vanilla dumplings.
Yeah, it's gonna sound pretty arsey, but like I mean, I love Japanese food, but I do not like mochi very much.
Yeah, no, it's not quite like mochi, because mochi is sort of quite sticky and taffy-like, whereas this is a really soft, very light, airy sponge dough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely recommend them.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go to that cafe again sometime in the future when I've got a bit more money, because I haven't been there for like at least a couple of years. But we definitely should go to like. I would definitely need to like get you to come with me to like a couple of ones that I haven't tried yet that are closer towards the clock tower in the centre of Brighton, just down the road from there. Because there are a couple in that area that I haven't tried yet that do look and sound really good. There's one where you build your own ramen. There's there's a couple of like traditional Chinese restaurants there. There's Itsu, of course, which is where you want if you want your mainstream commercial like sort of sushi and stuff, and then
Yeah.
and then of course there's a couple of other places in that general cuisine sort of area around that sort of part of town. So I definitely want to go there with you sometime, just so we can try them out. In fact, yeah, either next time we have dinner together or like the time after, maybe we can try it out. Probably the time,
Yeah, no, sounds like a good plan.
probably the time after maybe, but still, it was I haven't tried many of those kind of ones near me just yet because I only recently moved into where I'm staying right now, so I've only tried out a few places to eat around where I am.
Yeah. No, I don't tend to hang around that part of town very much either, so I don't sort of go and get very much stuff to eat there.
Well, the thing is, it's like I live at the moment more in towards the centre of Brighton, whereas you live more in towards like the northeast edge of the city, don't you?
Yes, yes, I do.
So it's like you do have to like travel a bit more of a way. Plus, you don't use like a bike, do you?
No, no, I don't have one here.
Right. I mean, I pretty much get everywhere in Brighton like on bike or on foot, really. I mean, there's the odd occasion when I go around to my other mate's house for drinks to get somewhat merry, shall we say, and when that happens, I just use the bus basically. But yeah, I pretty much get everywhere else in Brighton by going on bike.
Yeah, whereas for me, I rely on buses and just walking because, yeah, cycling just doesn't really appeal to me here. I probably have been spoilt by living in Berlin and so on, where there's sort of long and continuous cycle paths. But here, the roads are too narrow, too winding, too steeply sloped. I'd be really scared of going downhill, particularly around where I live, where it is quite hilly.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. Like, I will say, even as someone who's lived most of their life in London, like, the cycle lanes in Brighton aren't the best. I mean, they're not the worst I've ever seen in England, but they're not the best either, by far.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. It's sort of, I don't really understand how Britain can keep producing so many great cyclists.
Yeah.
Then again, I dare say they don't sort of start out in London. They probably cycle through the Lake District and so on. And I can understand why you'd want to cycle through there.
Or maybe it's because they have such poor quality cycle lanes that they learn to cycle in really tricky conditions. That and
Yes,
also,
sort of Spartan approach to learning to cycle. You might be right.
and that, and also the fact that Britain has notoriously terrible weather. That combined with that might make it just like you said, Spartan way of learning. So they just toughen up and learn to cycle in really tricky situations.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
It'd help because like some of the situations you see in races like the Tour de France are like horrifically sort of like tricky, and so you think got to have a tremendous deal of fortitude to go through that.
Yes, indeed. And some of the Olympic cycling events as well, like particularly in Rio, during the Rio Olympics a couple of years ago, the year before last now, that was some quite tricky terrain they had to go through and some quite tricky courses as well. So I can understand why they'd benefit from training earlier in those conditions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I hope that one day, wherever I end up sort of living, it is in a place where I can sort of have my bike and I can cycle to and from work and whatever, but at the moment it's just not realistic.
Yeah, I mean, if you did end up going back to Germany to live in Berlin, you'd definitely be able to do it there.
Yeah, well, in most areas, yeah, I mean, even the worst areas of Berlin for cycling in are still... Yeah, the worst areas in Berlin are sort of kind of like the slightly better areas in like Brighton and so on. Yeah, because the centre of Berlin is quite difficult for cyclists. Mind you, the centre of Berlin is difficult for anyone to get around in. It's got the same problems as London, basically.
Yeah, I mean, no, it kind of has, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Well, I think we've covered a fair sort of breadth of topics there, haven't we?
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of like feels naturally like it's coming to its zenith like of conclusion. It's probably best to cut it off there before we like tire it out a bit. Don't want to do a
always leaves them wanting more.
Yeah, the best not to do a
Family Guy.
Yeah, I was going to say just generally a franchise that overstays its welcome. I was going to say more something like Shrek or something, but yeah, best just to leave it while it's ahead, you know. Best just to leave it at Shrek 2 or something. But yeah, we hope you guys have enjoyed this video. There was generally a bit more of a theme for like the first 3/4 of it, but at the same time, I feel like we got a fairly consistent podcast off there. If any of you guys do want to see any more videos like this, be sure to leave a like, comment, share and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comment section below. And if you want to show any extra support to me, be sure to check out my social media platforms and my 2 other YouTube channels in the video description below. And when Phil sets up his book review channel or wherever it may be, I'll be sure to like put that in the description of any other future videos with him in it. Got anything else to add?
Not particularly, no, other than to wish you all a Merry Christmas if we don't have another podcast before then.
Yeah, and
or whatever holidays you celebrate.
And a Happy New Year, of course, as well, if we don't see you guys before the festivities. But until next time, stay safe, have fun with whatever you're doing. I've been Gitbag the Great with
Flash Suppressor.
And we'll see you guys next time on the battlefield.
Take care.
No, it's bye-bye for now. Fucking sake, you ruined it.
Really? Is that an actual thing? I mean, you're sort of pausing there like you're expecting me to say something.
Podcast is over. Phil's ruined it all.
Oh, fair enough then. See